Welcome back to another terrific Every Other Thursday training video. This week we are going to talk about, or George is going to talk about enhancing the suppressed in OPAC message in Koha. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Christopher Brandon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network, soon to be changed.
And I'm George Williams. I'm the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System.
So George, what do you have for us?
So we have records in that are, in Koha, there's different ways to keep a record from appearing in the OPAC. There are ways to suppress entire records where you can say, you can go at the mark level, you can say in 942, I don't remember what the subfield is, it's like 942E or 942N is, if you put a flag there, you will suppress the record and the whole record won't show up in the OPAC at all. Then you can also, there's OPAC hidden items where you can say anything with this status will be hidden from display in the OPAC, or any item with this item type won't display in the OPAC. And those are pretty useful, but let me show you if I go over to Koha and I do a search for a book. This is the koha-US test system demo site. So if we go to the Topeka School is one of the books in here. And actually, I need to search for that in the catalog, not as a patron. There is no patron called the Topeka School. So right here, you'll see this little message that says suppressed in OPAC.
Mm-hmm.
And if we switch over to the details page, right over here is a little message that says OPAC view suppressed in the OPAC. So for, what's that?
It's kind of buried.
It's tiny. It's a teeny tiny little thing in there. And it's way down below the subject and the description and all of that stuff. So what I've got, and we have a lot of records in our system that are suppressed, and a lot of items that are hidden, but this is only going to affect the fully suppressed records. So what I did is I wrote first I wrote some CSS. And I created some CSS that I call it suppress label. And it just creates a little bootstrap-like label and gives it, a shape and a background and some color. And then what I've got is some jQuery. And what this jQuery does is on cataloging results and the results summary, it's going to look for the label that says suppressed OPAC, which if we look at the details of this element, it's got a class results summary suppressed OPAC.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all we're doing is we're grabbing that class only on the results page, and we're adding a new class to it called suppressed label. And if I put that on there and then reload this page, it's going to add well, that didn't work at all. Why didn't that work?
It's the editing in my future.
Oh, I see exactly what I did. This is not for the this is for the results page. So this is the piece I wrote to change the label on the results page. So it's just taking that class and applying it to the the message in the results page. So when you look at a list of records, there's two records that come up when you do this. The ones that are suppressed are going to have that red bootstrap style label on them.
Nice.
The CSS or the jQuery for the details page is an extra piece. And it's doing the same thing. It's instead of looking at the catalog results, it's looking on the catalog details page, and catalog details biblio suppressed OPAC. It's adding that suppressed label, and it's also going to do this other thing. It's going to take that whole piece and insert it at the beginning of the record. So when I save this, and it's also going to do one other thing, it's going to hide the label. So there's two parts to this. There's the piece here that says OPAC view and the part that says suppressed and OPAC. It's going to hide this. It's going to turn this into a label. And when we reload it, now that we've saved that, it's going to pump it to the top of the page above the title, so that when staff go to this record, it's going to be really obvious to them that this is suppressed.
Okay.
And there's something else. So this is great for Koha. I can add one other little piece though.
Can you go back for a second? I just
Sure.
wanted to make an observation on your code.
To the jQuery.
What's that?
Back to the jQuery.
Yes. So, I don't claim to be a code master in any way, but I would highly suggest, I don't know, you could take this one way or the other. I get how you're separating what's happening on one page from what's happening on another page. I think, some would argue, okay, well, you've got this on this second bit of code on your first line where you're doing pretty much the same thing about adding the class. I would probably try to keep, the same action in the same jQuery. So, if you're just doing this in two different places, then specify those two different places in that first line up above. So you're doing
put it all together in one piece instead of having it in two different.
This is what you're having it do in all these places, rather than it's doing it in this place and then it's doing it in this place. Do that and then just have this code dedicated to its specific task, where it's inserting it before a certain place and hiding the label for it. So
right. And I get what you're saying there. The reason that I do it this way is because this way, when we are ready for an upgrade, I can put all of these things together, and I know that when I go to test my custom code, that when I'm on the search page, these are all of the things that I want to check for to make sure they're working are going to start with this. And then later when I'm on the details page, I know that all the things that I'm going to check when I'm testing for the details page are going to start with this. So that's the reason I separate them, is because it makes it easier for me to do testing when we're getting ready for an upgrade.
Yeah, and if you're doing that for a couple, two or three things, that makes sense. If you're doing it for 50 different places something shows up, then it might be worth specifying it in one location rather than 50 sections. But
it's just a different way of doing it. But I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Back to what you were talking about.
Back to what I'm at. To what the code actually does is, it takes that from down here and it puts it up here. And I could do other things with this. I could make it bigger, but it just is a quick way for staff to recognize that thing is suppressed in the OPAC. And then there's this other piece that I've added to our system, because we now use Aspen Discovery. So I can also add this little piece here and this little piece here. And what it's doing is it's going to change the text of that label from suppressed in OPAC to suppressed in Aspen Discovery. And that'll do it on the search results page as well. I'll change that from suppressed in OPAC to suppressed in Aspen Discovery. So that was something that I, worked out this weekend. We have, for the longest time, we've used custom XSLT sheets for our records, and it makes it, and I'm not thrilled with those, because then when the Koha community makes changes to the default XSLT, it's not included in ours, and there's been some good things added. And so without going through and editing our custom ones, it's just easier, I'm feeling, to stick with the default sheets now. And
Yeah.
so I'm switching us over to the default sheets. And that was something that I always had an issue with our custom sheets, is that the XSLT, I learned jQuery pretty quickly when I started using Koha, and I learned CSS pretty quickly using Koha, but the custom XSLT is out of my league. I don't know if you've ever edited one of those, but it's a
I've
little nutty.
I've looked at the custom XSLT or at, I've looked at the XSLT. I've wanted to tinker with it, but yeah, you're right in that if they change something in it, we don't see that because we're pointing to a custom version of it. So we don't get those changes. The other issue was I've tried and I've gotten nowhere even through support. It's like, why can't, I'm trying to point to a custom XSLT and uh, it's not happening for some reason. I don't know why. So I've run into issues just even pointing to a custom sheet. I mean, there are some things that make sense. If I have access to uh, the code, I'd rather make those changes in the code rather than through jQuery, because jQuery changes things after the fact, and you can turn certain things on and off, and those changes
Right.
never happen. Um, so if you can do something in CSS or in the code, that's always a better choice over jQuery. It's funny hearing me say that because I'm all about making changes in jQuery most of the
Yeah.
time. But yeah, XSLT has been its own little uh, thing that I've had trouble with just even implementing, pointing to something, to my own version of it. So I don't know why it's been frustrating, but I mean, it makes sense. I would prefer to learn how to do those things rather than I feel like jQuery is a band-aid. Um,
Right.
and I'm grateful for jQuery. I think jQuery is a real driving force for Koha because you can customize the heck out of Koha because of it. But I would like to be able to do things in the right place, so that jQuery doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting.
Right. Ideally, when I change something in jQuery, I also make the change. I also submit a ticket to Bugzilla saying, could Koha do this thing that I'm doing with this other, unless it's something really trivial.
Mm-hmm. It would be nice if there was some way to do to point to an XSLT customization that utilizes the default, but just adds to it or modifies
Yeah,
in some way. But I
but I don't know that that's possible.
no, I pretty much jQuery is doing that. So
Right.
yeah, um, yeah, I like what you've done. I'm all for making something stand out or making it more obvious. There's a lot that's buried in the details on those detailed pages and on the results pages. And that's great. I might consider doing something like that, or just, I don't know if I would specifically call out the specific product that we're using. I might just say record is publicly suppressed or something, something generic, but I don't know.
I chose to say suppressed in Aspen Discovery since we're not using the Koha OPAC anymore, because everybody is familiar enough now after 6 months with Aspen Discovery. I want them, the question that came up last week is, I can't find this in, I can find it in Koha, but I can't find it in Aspen Discovery. And I said, well, if you look at there, it's suppressed. It says, it's got a label on it that says suppressed in OPAC. And they said, well, this isn't the OPAC. This is in Aspen Discovery. And so,
Right.
well, Aspen Discovery is your OPAC now, in addition to being the discovery layer. And so I just decided that to make it simpler for my staff, just to say, change the label so that it read suppressed in Aspen Discovery
Makes
instead
sense.
of in the OPAC. So
Yep.
It's also suppressed in the OPAC, but nobody goes there anymore.
So, all right. Well, George, thanks for that little modification. Although it wasn't very little for you to prep for this, but great little enhancement. Hopefully somebody will find that useful and take advantage of it.
Somebody besides me?
Maybe me. All right. We'll see everybody again in 2 weeks.
All right. See you all later.